Super.
Welcome to the Awakening podcast, where we have truth tellers and not conspiracy theorists, where we have facts, not whistleblowers. Today, my guest in Turin is Dr. Marek Roland. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
So how we met, I don't know, was it 8 or 10 years ago?
Something like that, in that range. Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of amazed at your youth, and you gave me some advice, and it was about rebounding.
And it was useful.
I have got it, and I still do it to this day.
Super, super. So it was inspiring for you.
It was definitely. I mean, do you mind me stating your age?
Yes, I am 66 years old right now. 66 and a half, actually.
Yeah, so
in January I would be 67.
So to look at, you do not look that age, so there's something you're doing right. So maybe the rebounding, you might actually tell us about the benefits of the rebounding.
Well, basically, age is determined by the lifestyle, right? Is determined very much by the way you live, the exercises which you do, sleep pattern, rest pattern, reduction of the stress, diet. Diet is essential as well. And avoidance, if possible, pharmaceutical medications, because many disorders and many diseases could be treated naturally. And that usually is the best option. I am not excluding the option of using other medications, but that is the secondary choice. Usually you can choose therapies which are natural therapies. And for example, I didn't have antibiotic in 30 years. And some people I know from my friend, a doctor in Canada, that on the average, middle-aged people take about 6 antibiotics a year, which is crazy. It's sort of like candies, they treat this as candies. Unfortunately, antibiotics are very dangerous because they destroy the biota of the microorganisms which are living in your digestive tract, and as well they are damaging to the environment, your body. And in a sense, that should be the medication of the last resort. In many cases, you don't have to use antibiotics. I even treated, I have sepsis twice, and I treated myself with herbs and with the diet. I wouldn't advise anybody to go this route because it's dangerous. I mean, I could do that on myself. I wouldn't recommend this on my patients or anybody like that because it's very risky. But it basically shows that you can, even in such an acute infection, you can cure without antibiotics. So it's possible.
What I was using, because I even noticed it with my children, that when they were getting antibiotics, they were just constantly sick. It weakens the system.
I know.
And I start doing like the oregano on coconut oil,
that's right.
turmeric on honey.
Right. And you follow as well my advices as well there, right? Yes.
Yeah. So I don't get sick, and my children, they don't get sick either.
I have the same, we have patients around the world, in Poland and in Canada, US, UK, and many places. And some people basically take the advice just over internet. A friend of mine from US, for example, wrote to me that his friend had cancer of prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know even guy. He never contacted me. Basically, he read about my diet. He applied this diet in his life, and within a couple of months, his cancer was gone. Right. So that was amazing. Recently, we have 62 years old man. He had bladder cancer, two nodules, cancerous nodules. Medical doctors checked that. He was waiting for operation, and he applied the diet and some herbs, which we advise. I work with some medical doctors and medical professors as well, and dietitians, and he applies those advices, and within 5 weeks, the cancer was gone. Which to me was a surprise, even because I was thinking that would take months. It took 5 weeks. So it's incredible. I think medicine, holistic medicine, should be part of the medicine, or basically this type of medicine should be in practice, used in practice. Right now, medicine is very harmful in a sense. It's too much focus on pharmaceutical solutions. And there are many solutions to medical problems which are outside for pharmaceutical solutions, and they are not harmful. They are useful. Chinese medicine has a lot of tradition, like herbal traditions, Ayurveda, medicines which are used in India and many other places. We should get that information and use the best techniques to keep humans in the best health.
And because I talk to a lot of doctors all around the world, none of them are trained in these methods.
No,
it's
because
pharmaceutical from day one.
Yes, because the medicine was dominated since about 1913, years 1913 in US. Rockefeller family and some other families who were involved in oil exploration and Rothschilds and so on invested heavily into pharmaceutical industry, and they as well financed the schools. They helped to finance the medical schools, which were teaching mostly pharmaceutical angle to the medicine, and diet and herbs were sort of shifted away, and some other techniques, and that shouldn't happen. But I mean, that then was perpetuated into the entire world. So right now, almost in every country, this type of medicine is practiced. I call this pharmaceutical medicine. I don't call this academic medicine, because some say it doesn't have to do a lot with academia, because this medicine rejects very often the newest inventions, newest development, in a sense. Good medical doctors should improve their knowledge, and they should learn new techniques. They should learn new research. Very often this is not true. As with diet, as you mentioned, in medical schools across the world, there is either zero, no diet at all, or maybe 6 hours in entire course. So that's nothing. I studied diet for like 30 years or more, and I still have things to learn. It's complex, and you cannot learn that in 6 hours. There's no way. And it's very important. This diet, I don't know whether I mentioned to you when we met first time, increases as well your endurance. So it's very good for sportsmen. It increases IQ. So, for example, it's very good for use with children, but with adults as well. It improves your vision, hearing, IQ, probably by 20 points. So it's quite amazing. The side effects is that you think afterwards that everybody is stupid. I sort of joke like that, but that's really true.
And what foods? Can you give the listeners some of the tips?
Well, for example, one of the there are some of the foods are superfoods. One of the superfoods is milk, actually, but it has to be milk which is directly from goats. Goat milk is the best, or cow's milk, but not from the store. The one from the store is pasteurized, is homogenized, and could contain some chemicals. So you need a milk which is from farms where they treat animals properly, and milk is organic. And it's non-processed, so it's raw milk. And the best form of raw milk is actually sour milk. So goat sour milk is one of those superfoods, or eventually cow's milk is a good food. Another superfood, and milk contains probably 600-700 different chemicals. You can basically, you would have in milk everything which you need to live. In India, milk is treated as a medicine. Another superfood is eggs. But if you boil them, if you fry them, if you process them, then they become even harmful. Eggs are the most valuable when you eat them raw. Not egg yolk, not egg white. Egg yolk you can eat raw, and you can eat like ordinary boiled eggs. You can put in a glass or something, or on a plate, put a little bit of salt there and black pepper, cayenne, or something like that. Or you can use that in some cocktails. So you can make fruit, vegetable cocktails, or maybe coca or something like that. But you cannot process this. The egg white, on the other hand, contains a chemical which is called avidin, and that has to be cooked. So either you should throw this away, or you can use this for making noodles or something like that, or pastry or something. But you cannot eat them. It has to be cooked, so you cannot eat whole egg, just the egg yolk. But adult person can eat 2-3 if a person is a sportsman or does very heavy work, physical work or exercise. They could eat more, even 4. It's no problem.
So I assume they should be the organic ones as well.
Organic,
a lot
yes,
of people aren't
course.
aware of the numbering system.
Oh, no,
but if they're number 3, they cut their beaks and put them into like a tiny cage.
No, it has to be. I mean, first of all, from empathy towards animals, I think they should be treated properly. Yes. I think the chickens should be able to run free, eat, some greens and other stuff on the backyard, get good food, because I mean, chickens won't synthesize certain things. The same with the cow. So their feed must be organic. Their feed must be very, very high quality. Excluding soy, excluding corn, those are not, or wheat and things like that, and definitely organic. And eggs like that are very valuable. If I would be on a deserted island and somebody would give me a choice of one food which I can eat, it would be either sour milk or egg yolks. They are superfoods. They contain hundreds of chemicals, organic chemicals, probably, as I said, on the order of 700 or something like that. And they are very, very useful. Very, very useful.
And people would say, like, the cancer, is that very beneficial, these kind of foods?
Yes, it is. It is, because in cancer, it's important how your immune system works. And immune system depends how your brain works, and how your nervous system works, how your digestive system works. Organisms cannot have deficiencies, because if body has deficiencies, then all different parts of the body don't work properly. So you cannot have deficiencies. You need to, if you discover that you have any deficiencies, you should take supplements to eliminate those. Or you should eat a very, very good diet as well to eliminate them quickly, because a lot of systems would fail. The skin, how the skin looks like, depends on the food which you eat as well. Cardiovascular system, brain, and everything. On top of that, for example, in cancer, what is important, foods have, especially older people, the synthesis of collagen. Collagen is very important. And in order to do that, you have to have good diet. And for example, milk and egg yolk contribute to production of collagen in the body. And this is very important, because in many cases, of all cases, body encapsulates some pathogens and nodules, cancerous nodules, with a layer of collagen. And if you have low synthesis and you don't have in the diet components for the body to build collagen, then there is a problem. because body loses the opportunity. Basically, the layer of collagen cuts off the blood flow and oxygen and things like that. So those things die away, you know. So that's very important.
Because there's one thing that I'm hearing recently is iodine.
Sorry?
Iodine?
Iodine?
Yeah.
Iodine.
Is that something that we should ensure that
you should. You cannot overdose on that, but iodine definitely is important, especially in the climates when you don't have probably access, when you are close to the ocean and you eat some seafood, and as well you swim in the water, you breathe the air. You might have enough iodine, but at times a lot of problems are with iodine deficiencies as well. But you can get Lugo supplement, and you can get iodine supplements, but that has to be done under careful eye of good dietitian or medical doctors, so you don't overdose. You know, some people have tendency to overdose some supplements, and you shouldn't. I mean, certain things, first of all, is a waste of money to overdose. The other is some supplements in high doses could be harmful, you know, so that goes for, you know, many vitamins. For example, C, you can take vitamin C 6,000 or 3 to 6,000 long term with no problem, 6,000 milligrams. Vitamin D as well, you can take up to 8,000 units per day, and that could be long term. And those are very important. The same with zinc. You can take zinc supplement of about probably 25 to 50 milligrams and so on. So you have to always check and not overdose, because some people tend to overdose supplements. The best is to have good diet. And in that case, you probably won't need to supplement, maybe some things, you know, like maybe vitamin C and vitamin D and so on, but very few.
Okay.
If you don't eat meat, I, for example, don't eat meat for last 20 years. I have to supplement B12, because when you don't eat meat, that's usually you develop deficiencies in B12. But other than that, you don't have to supplement anything else. And actually, not eating meat is very beneficial. It turns out that meat eaters have, I think, if I remember reading one medical study, increase of colon cancer was 50 times, so 5,000% in colon cancer if you eat meat versus non-eating meat. Eating soy is harmful, so there are certain things which are harmful, and definitely eating meat. I feel great. My level of collagen, you can check, is very good, you know, despite the fact that I have 66 years old. I am 66. And so this diet is fine, you know, you don't lose weight, you have strengths. As I said, IQ is great. I have good memory. All my patients and friends and family, people who use this diet, have the same effects. So some people would say, oh, well, it's genetics. No, we see that across different genders, different racial profiles and so on. It works the same. So it's universal. And you checked it yourself, some things, and it works for you as well, right? So that's good. No, I'm glad that that's good.
And like because now we're living in an era of panic because of the corona.
Right.
Like, I mean, the first thing I was doing is building up my immune system.
That's right. You see, that's the first thing which I put it out for people. I said, if you want to fight any infection like coronavirus or anything like that, basically you should improve your immune system. And what the government does, government locks people in apartments. They are stressed out. They don't see sun. They don't walk. You know, they wear masks. Everything suppresses the immune system. And that's the best protection against any type of disease. So in a sense, they are doing things totally wrong. And on top of that, coronavirus is not very dangerous. I mean, It was made in the lab, yes, indeed, either in US or Israel, not in China, because China didn't have a technical capability to the same level. It was released on purpose. Basically, it was released by companies and on the order of so-called New World Order, basically a group of couple of hundred people who are rich, powerful, and they are psychopaths. Mm. And basically the purpose was to make people dependent more on state and to remove civil liberties, to introduce mandatory vaccinations, which would be harmful, as well to put people in debt, and countries and individually people to take over companies which fell because of the recession, which was totally unnecessary, because it was introduced, those measures which were introduced are not needed at all, so when you look at those things which have been done as far as coronavirus is concerned, it's done by idiots, psychopaths, and people who don't have in heart the best of the humanity.
Totally agree.
So there would be a lot of casualties from that. Financial, health-wise, a lot of people would die because they have very weak immune system. Imagine they get sepsis or even flu, not coronavirus, but some kind of flu or some other things. Because of the suppressed immune systems, they have much less chance to fight that off. And so coronavirus is a blown out of proportion thing. Basically, it's a cooperation between New World Order, mass media, pharmaceutical industry, medical industry, and basically, I think a lot of bribes were given to various key officials to do that. And humanity is at the receiving end, and we are losing in a sense because of the, as I said, because of falling economy, falling general health of people. The term the herd immunity or herd resistance to certain things. In order to build your immune system and resistance, you have to have contact with people.
Yes.
The one thing which I didn't mention before as well, locking people in place reduces contact. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of different pathogens, and through infections, infections which are basically contact, you get few viruses or few bacteria, and you basically don't develop disease. Basically, you acquire immunity. You have to contact with people, and being in some public places, at certain distance, if somebody even coughs, you get some of the germs. You don't develop disease, but you build immunity. And this is sort of like a vaccination. It's impossible to make vaccination for millions of pathogens or hundreds of thousands pathogens. But by being surrounded by people and having exchanged some water or touching certain objects and so on, in small quantity, it's beneficial. It's beneficial. And that has been denied to children. Young children, they don't develop immunity if they are isolated like that. And the same with adults. So I would see, as an effect of that, I would see a lot of people dying from this or acquiring diseases, which otherwise they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I think I would blame that basically on those stupid regulations.
And like there was a lot of people as well that if they were having heart problems or anything, or even a cancer, they were afraid to go to the hospital because they thought they might get coronavirus.
That's right. Or medical doctors wouldn't admit them. And that's a very serious problem. That's what happened. I heard the stories that medical doctors won't admit certain people because they were afraid of themselves of coronavirus. and a lot of people were denied medical health.
Yeah.
You know, the other day postman came here, you know, and he brought a register mail or some kind of mail. And it was very hot day, like 30 degrees Celsius. He was sweating, red on his face, and he was in the mask. And I said, you shouldn't wear a mask because you would get heart attack in conditions like that. He said, I already had heart attack. And I said, what? And you wear the mask after having heart attack? You know, so this is crazy. Mm-hmm. You know, the other day as well, I saw a woman, it was as well hot day, and she was walking with, I think, husband, and all of a sudden she fell. It was hot, probably 30, 40 degrees in the sun, because it was no shaded area. That's another stupidity. You know, once upon a time along the roads, you had trees. There were no trees. And she fell. I came up to her and I said, you shouldn't wear the mask. I mean, you probably deprive your body lungs of oxygen, and basically you fell, you know, because you lost conscious for a moment, you know. Crazy, totally crazy, you know. So people who introduce those measures should be put in jail. They are a bunch of criminals.
And like there's a financial incentive as well, because if they diagnosed COVID, they were getting like $13,000 a euro.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
if it was on a machine,
that's right.
Like that in itself is proving how corrupt the system is.
That's right. So in a sense, system is basically rewarding lying. Because I mean, if hospitals in US, I heard as well that they were getting a huge amount of money, like 18,000 or something, like they admitted somebody with coronavirus. So huge amounts of money, and a lot of those cases were basically diagnosed falsely as coronavirus using wrong tests as well. And basically, if somebody dies of some other diseases, very often they wrote as a reason of death, they wrote coronavirus, because there were some financial and some pressure from above, you know. So that's crazy. That's totally immoral. Totally immoral.
There's because I wrote a book and I'm about to release this about exposing a lot of this, and I was asking.
You wrote a book?
Yeah, and I'm about to release it.
Wow, that's good. Yeah. That's super. And super. Can I get a copy?
Of course.
Autograph.
Yes,
autograph.
Of course.
Super.
And it's basically exposing the corruption with solutions. And I was checking out, because Ireland has all the pharmaceutical companies, and I was asking one of the top consultants, which ones don't give kickbacks?
Yeah,
they all do.
Yeah. Oh, of
so
course.
That, like, how are they looking after the individual if they're, you know, prescribing the most expensive medication, even though it might be 10 times worse, just because they're getting a free car, they're getting free trips and everything. It is sick.
This is known. You know, I know this because my family is in the industry, in a sense, because it's an industry. And unfortunately, a lot of those people basically take bribes, you know, and incentives. They get incentives, you know, some vacations, some paid conferences, where conferences one day and the rest of the week, whole week, you have free to enjoy, you know. So that's crazy. That's really crazy, immoral.
And they want the patient for life, you know, on blood pressure tablets, heart tablets. They intentionally do that, even though they're not diagnosing them properly.
Yeah, and you know, and they want to keep patients basically sick all the time. Yes. I said sometimes I compare a medical doctor with a car mechanic, and I said, why would you accept car mechanic which would ask you to come every 2 weeks with your car? Because something is knocking in your engine. And after 2 weeks, you would go again and again and again. You would change the mechanic, right? You know, yet people go to doctor every 2 weeks or something like that, and they don't change the doctor or way of trying to treat themselves, you know. And for life, basically, till the end of the life, they take, you know, full feast of some medications, and many of them have very serious side effects. Yeah. You know, we talked before the show, we talk as well about that basically the governments don't want people to last long. Yeah. You know, in other words, you want people to die off after they retire as soon as possible. because government doesn't have obligation to pay the pensions and, you know, retirement pensions and so on, you know. So the same thing happened like with, you know, I bought this watch like 30 years ago and still works very good. If you buy things right now, I mean, many of them break after 3, 4, 5 years, you know, so government as well benefits from that, because once upon a time you could buy a thing, a watch or refrigerator or washing machine or something, and it would last 30 years. So you paid tax twice, let's say 10%. And right now you have to buy every 5 years. So within 30 years, you buy this 6 times. So government gets 10% 6 times within 30 years. So it's a huge benefit. So once upon a time, going back 30, 40 years ago, things were made durable, you know, so were durable. And that was better for the environment as well. Because right now we have piles and piles of garbage, you know. I don't know whether you watch the video. It's actually animation by Steve Katz. Steve Katz. Take a look at the YouTube. He makes very nice short cartoons. They are about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes. One of them is called Men. You know, check it out. And he made several ones. He's quite famous by now. Excellent. Basically illustrates how silly our civilization is. You know how wrong we do things.
Yeah. Like I know for in the car industry that there's actually clickers on the door.
Yeah.
When the door is closed so many times, a certain part breaks.
That's
and
right.
I had sensors in my tires that, like, obviously before we never had that, but it's to tell you have a puncture or something like that. And when one went, I forget the price, was like $100. The guy said they're all going to go, and within a week the whole lot of them went. I mean, how is that possible?
Wow.
You know.
So, you know, I heard that they hire specialists which specialized in designing things so they don't last.
Yeah.
So in other words, like my mother bought a TV from very good company. I won't mention the name maybe, but a very good company. And the TV was very high quality. And I think it has like 2 years warranty or 3 years. And about 2-3 months after expiration of warranty, the TV stopped working. My mother was quite upset because it was holiday time. She was alone. So we went to the shop to repair. They removed the board. One of the boards was damaged. Fortunately, they exchanged it. And I took the board, and this guy told me, he said, look how it's built. I mean, this thing is built such a way that it's going to break. You know, all the wires, everything was very thin, very densely packed and so on. It was not made solid. This company, I know they have one of the best technologies in the world. They could make TV which would last 30 years, but they don't want that.
And we were even discussing at the start as well that I noticed in New York, the fire station, that there's a bulb, it's over 100 years.
Yeah.
And now they make them that
I have a picture of that. You see the fire station, yes.
Yeah.
The wire is actually at lower sort of temperature, because it's sort of when you change the temperature of the wire, in other words, depends on the voltage which you apply, things last longer, but as well it depends on the quality of wire, depends on the gas which is in it. But I tell you another story which is interesting about technology. Right now we are going into electric cars, which I think is pretty good. I have a picture of a car which was built in 1912, I think. I think around 1920, there was more electric cars in the US than gasoline cars. And there were trolleys and buses which were electric powered, but companies didn't want them to, they wanted people to use oil, and Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and so on. So they basically destroyed this industry. But I can, what I was surprised about this car, I have a picture of it. It had a range in 1912 of 100 kilometers on a battery, which is a lot. Imagine how much we would progress if we would work on that since 1912. On top of that, this battery, you wouldn't believe it, it lasted till 1990. So it lasted 80 years. And you know why they have to replace it? Battery was still good. The enclosure broke.
Wow.
So, you know, so that simply shows that we basically we block certain technologies. That was clear blocking of the technology. Because if cars, we could build batteries which would last 80 years, and it could have range 100 kilometers in 1912, how far we would progress if we would put money and our minds into it. You know, so the same is with health and so on. So when you look at things which are happening in the world, my conclusion is that we are governed by idiots and psychopaths, because there is no other explanation to accept what is happening in the world. Those people must be totally brain dead, and they are psychopaths, you know. And is, to me, which is amazing, that we have some extremely bright people, geniuses in the world, who could make the world much better, you know, but they are not allowed to contribute. Basically, they are blocked from contributing. And so progress of humanity, progress of science, of technology, it's slowed down very often, and treatments, medicine and so on, it's slowed down by those idiots who are basically blocking those very bright people. You know, the same with environment. I mean, environment is damaged quite a lot, and we are damaging this to the point when we would get extinct. You know, a lot of scientists are saying that within probably 10 years, if we don't change things, between 10 to 20 years, we get extinct, you know, and nobody seems to do anything about it. I mean, lower class, which are, you know, I mean, basically they are ignorance, big army of ignorance. They basically don't know and they don't care. Idiots on the top, you know, this small class of idiots on the top and psychopaths, they think that they can live in this world and they can hide themselves in the bunkers in New Zealand and some other places. They have illusion of that. The problem is that things in bunkers would break down as well, and food supply wouldn't last that long, and maybe they would live maybe 20 years longer, and they eventually would die off as well. Yeah. So, you know, it's a stupid thing. And the only class which is thinking about this clearly and knows what's happening is a middle class, which is this sort of narrow thing which is between those idiots on the bottom and idiots on the top, you know, a middle class. And a middle class, unfortunately, is ignored by both layers of the society, the bottom layer and upper layer of the society. And in middle class are scientists, professors, and, you know, the brightest people are there, you know, and we have to change that. We have to change that because problem of potential extinction of us is very real, very real. Many years ago, I predicted we produce, I think right now on Earth, about 250,000 different chemicals. Majority of them are toxic. Majority of those things are toxic, and I predicted that within quite few years, my prediction was by year of 2030 that we are going to get extinct, most of us, if we don't change things. Many other scientists from the world, top scientists, think the same, between 2030 and 2040. And I watched a video from South Africa. There's a park on the border of South Africa and another country. I don't remember the name of the country. There's a park called Kruger Park. And in this Kruger Park, which is White Park, there's a big river and there are living crocodiles. Crocodiles are very robust animals, very robust animals. They are on Earth probably something like 350 million years ago. They lived through the time of dinosaurs and so on. And crocodiles somehow survived because they were in the water. So despite the fact that when the meteorite hit the Earth and most of the life get extinct, crocodiles survive. And all of a sudden, the crocodiles in this river started to die. And so the people who were guardians there and who were basically supervising this park, they took medical stuff and they did autopsies on those crocodiles. And it turns out they didn't have any special pathogens or infections or anything. So there was nothing which would explain why they were dying in large numbers. And so what they decided to do is they took some deposits on the bottom of the river, like mud and so on, and they took water samples and they sent this to several labs. And the results came. And the results were showing that in this water, there is like a couple of thousand substances. But substances are tested for toxicity and usually they have certain range within which is considered that they are safe, right? Yeah. From 0 to certain level. So depending on chemicals, those are different. All those chemicals were meeting those standards. So in other words, they were there, but they were meeting those standards. So all of a sudden they had a puzzle why chemicals are, according to standards, are safe, yet those crocodiles are dying. And immediately I knew what was happening, because we test toxicity independently, one chemicals independent from others. When we do tests, we only expose animal, for example, to single toxin. So, for example, if I offer you some water, imagine I would tell you, okay, I am going to put a chemical and it's within safe range, one chemical, would you drink it? Possibly you would. Okay. No, you won't? Okay, all right. Anyway, so imagine that I would put 1,000 chemicals and all would be within range. Yeah, I am sure you wouldn't drink that. But a recent study in Germany shows that bottled water has about 20,000 different chemicals. Wow. Many of them harmful. And tap water a lot of too. So probably the best solution is not to drink bottled water because it as well, some of the plastic gets into the water. Exactly. The safest is to have good tap water, or if you have well, and then use good filter on top of that. So in other words, good source of water, and it's cheaper. You don't have to carry anything, and you get better quality of water.
I had a device which you actually check the amount of particles in the water, and the tap water through a filter was 10 times better than a lot of the bottled water. Yeah. It was scary, the amount of them. And people think they're doing themselves a favor by buying bottled water.
That's right. I see people carrying those heavy loads of water, and I think, my God, on top of that, they pollute the environment because those bottles get into the environment. So it's not a good way. The best advice for people who are watching this is basically, if you have good water supply in terms of tap water, then put good filter, in the order of maybe $200-300 or something like that. Under the sink, the best filters are multi-stage under the sink. Check some reviews and so on, and change the cartridges in them and use filters like that. It's much more economical, it's much safer. Another thing if I can mention to you is something which we didn't talk about, and if you want we can, is electromagnetic pollution. Mm-hmm. In other words, like 4G, 5G, and so on.
Yes.
And there is a scientist, a person in the United States. His name is Arthur Firstenberg. I was in contact with Arthur. He's a good activist. He's one of those people who are very sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. People like that cannot live in the city even, you know, and there is fewer and fewer places where they could live because they have various symptoms. I am sensitive as well. So I became aware of that about 30 years ago when cell phones were introduced. I remember I was using somebody's cell phone. I didn't have cell phone at that time. And I spoke for just a couple of minutes and I got quite strong pain in my ear and my head, you know. And so I started to investigate that. And it turns out that the levels which those devices produce are very harmful. And unfortunately, people are using more and more cell phones, many hours. You know, the radiation levels in the cities are increasing. Arthur Firstenberg mentioned in his book, he wrote a book, the name of the book is No Place to Hide. No place to hide. So in other words, wherever you are, you cannot hide from this. That in New York, for example, in 30 years, the levels of radiation increased 100,000 times. So that's huge. That's huge. So in many places, radiation is very, very bad, very, very high level. I remember I was in Chicago. I have small device to check the level and I carry that with me. And I was in downtown Chicago and the same in downtown Warsaw. And this thing was, you know, beeping like crazy because the levels were very high. So I avoid places like that. For a moment, I wanted to show you, excuse me for a second. I would show you a device here, which is a Polish invention. And this device is called Bioemi. And this is a very interesting device because this thing is, that is the light which is showing that it's working. It's an active device with rechargeable batteries. And that reduces the effects of radiation when it's at low level, electromagnetic radiation or medium level. The problem is as well in some places when antenna is on top of your building or next door, and I know places like that, then basically radiation can do damage to your RNA and DNA and so on. So it actually does damage, then this wouldn't work. But in many cases when it's medium to low level to medium level, where most people still are, then this device is working. And we use this device. We use that with our patients, like patients who have cancer. It's very useful because very often as well they are exposed to high level of radiation. What worries me is that this radiation is getting higher and higher every year.
Like they're putting all the satellites. There's going to be 100,000 satellites. So a lot of people are saying, "Oh, great! Elon Musk is a great guy
that's
himself."
Great.
And
that's
Amazon, they're pumping.
Crazy. Yeah. I don't know why people cannot think clearly and say, "Okay, I have fiber optics connection at home. I can wait 2 hours to watch the movie. I don't have to watch this in the car, or I don't have to watch this in the desert." You know, this is crazy. Because in a sense, people contribute to this stupidity. Oh. In other words, they think, oh, I want to watch this and I want to have high speed connection everywhere. No, that shouldn't be like that. It's very dangerous. In Canada, despite the fact I live in Canada for the last 40 years, I could afford cell phone since almost the very beginning, when it cost a couple of $1,000s. I could have phone like that. I didn't buy cell phone. To this day, I have only one small telephone, which is a sort of dumb cell phone, you know, dumb, really dumb. I got it from friends because they wanted to contact me, and I only had stationary phone. So they said, okay, we would give you the phone. So, I didn't want to take that, but eventually I did. And I used Zorelli. I use this phone like 2 minutes a day, if at all. But people spend hours. And they basically as well are contributing to the fact that this network is developing. And because of their stupidity, they are going to die. Recently, we had a patient, 30 years old girl, and she was using phone and watching things and so on, and she got cancer here. Unfortunately, she went into chemo despite the advice against it, chemo and radiation, and she died within 4 months. And there's a lot of people like that.
I've got in the book, there's a guy, Barry Trower. So he was ex-military for the Royal Navy. And he was saying that the damage it's mainly for the women, because when a baby is born, first of all, the first 100 days, so a lot of people are holding the phone close.
They do that,
And they're saying that the eggs are damaged. So that once they're damaged, they don't return. Yes, so within 2 or 3 generations, they're all going to be sterile.
Yeah, that's right. Sterile. The effect of radiation was discovered in policemen, because they had the guns for radar guns, and when they were pointing, some people have detectors in their cars. So in order to not be detected, they were pointing them down. And they were pointing them under testicles, and they got testicular cancer. So a lot of policemen who were using that like this, and measuring with this gun, pointing this down, they got testicular cancer. So I mean, the evidence is quite clear. Like with the cigarettes. I mean, cigarettes are very harmful, but basically they don't want to admit that. But that's very dangerous. I would advise everybody use those technologies minimally.
Get machines as well. That the full body scanners in the airport.
Yeah, I refuse to use that.
I do too.
I do.
They say an opt out. And they spend 20 minutes just tapping you down. But I read that they caused, they were supposed to be banned in the EU, but then if you're traveling to America, they have them in Dublin. And I've seen them in the UK as well. But yet, I tell the guards that are working there, I said, you do realize these cause cancer.
Yes.
And they don't care.
No, sit down. I know, I was in Canada and there was a scanner like this in the airport. And I said, you can search me if you want, I can undress totally. I mean, and I suggested that maybe you should make even naked flights. I said luggage could go the other way. People would fly naked, so they would be safer. So they started to laugh. But that's really what should happen. I mean, you shouldn't use those scanners. I have no problem. You can touch me. I can undress, no problem. But those scanners are very dangerous. You're right. I don't use them. No.
And you've had a few inventions, yeah?
Yes.
You might tell the audience what different inventions.
Oh, okay. I was always inventive guy, since I was very young. I remember, I remember we were in elementary school and we were supposed to build certain. We have some of the lectures were on some practical building some things, and I built a doorbell. And a friend of mine gave me a spring from the old clock, and I used this very creatively way. And probably this bell would last 500 years. I mean, it was built in such a way, so I was always able to do some interesting stuff. In 1992, I wrote a paper which explained on the basis of physics what is life. And at that time, actually, nobody in the world and scientists were scratching their heads. They couldn't explain very clearly. I showed that what supports life on Earth is a flow of energy and negative entropy, which is carried by photons, particles of light from sun to Earth. And I was actually first scientist as well who calculated what this flow is. On the basis of quantum mechanics and thermodynamics. I had I knew about 6 or 7 Nobel laureates. I sent my paper to 2 of them who were actually working in a similar discipline. And I got answer from one that is a little bit outside of his expertise. The other, Professor Manfred Eigen from Germany, he confirmed that everything was clear. So then I released this to the public in the world so they could understand that. And that created a revolution in understanding what life is. And that you can see that repercussions of that in many books and papers and so on. So that started the new activity in this area. And I was able, on the basis of that as well, to develop new diet called low entropy diet, which is the most advanced diet in the world, and explain what cancer is and how to treat cancer. As a matter of fact, how to treat majority of degenerative diseases. Because this knowledge gave me something which doctors didn't have, new knowledge. Unfortunately, as I said, people don't want to absorb this knowledge. I should be lecturing at the universities, medical schools, but somehow they don't want that knowledge to become common. It should. I mean, since my publication is almost 30 years, that's anyway. So that was the very big invention. During my Ph.D. work at university in Canada, at Dalhousie University, I built with a group of students one of the first scanners for ultrasound in the world, CT scan, but it was using ultrasounds, and it was the most advanced device in the world at this time. It was the most accurate. Thanks to the method which I developed, and some companies later started to use that for Doppler imaging of blood, speed of blood cells. So basically, so-called Doppler measurements of blood flow. So that was my contribution. Within that time as well, I invented a device for stuttering people. It was a small device which you could put a microphone and 2 headphones, and without slowing down speech, basically people could become fluent. About 95% of people were becoming instantly fluent. Unfortunately, a bunch of my colleagues from university, other professors, I was a professor at that time, stole my invention, and even went on Oprah Winfrey show. They were in Time magazine, and they claimed that they invented that, and they were basically liars and thieves, And that happens, unfortunately, with the inventions. I invented device for testing of hearing on computer. And that was very, very good. American Army is using that in Iran, Iraq, and in Afghanistan. NASA called us because wanted to use that on space station. I invented as well a device for testing tinnitus, which was the first commercially available test by testing tinnitus very accurately. The noises, to explain to audience, tinnitus is noise in the ears, some buzzing, whistling, and ringing, so on. Is ringing is called tinnitus. So I invented the first commercial device to test that. I made some CDs for testing hearing, for testing CD players, and so on. So over the years, I invented quite a few things. At the University of Toronto, when I was working after finishing my PhD, I invented a scanner for scanning materials or biological or some other materials using thermoacoustical imaging. So over the years, I did quite a few inventions.
Impressive.
And it's unfortunately, I find that certain inventions are not convenient for establishment. So establishments tries to downplay the invention or block it, whatever. For example, like my procedures of treating cancer or diet and so on, because maybe it's not useful fact that you increase IQ. They want people to be dumb, you know. So I mean, if you increase IQ by 20 points, that's quite a lot. Another thing, they don't want people to last longer, like those items, you know, so they don't want you to extend life by 40%, because my diet can increase lifespan by 40%, you know, and people basically age slower, you know, they heal faster if you get cut or anything, if you are a sportsman, you know, with this diet, you heal much faster, you have endurance and so on. So it's quite significant, you know. So I am proud of those inventions, but on the other hand, I am incredible. No, thank you. But on the other hand, I am sort of disappointed that that on one hand I was trained at the university at my expense and government expense in Poland and Canada. They acquired knowledge that I got to the point when I was able to invent things, because my level of knowledge was such that I basically I was on the fringes of science. In other words, on the borders where known meets unknown. In other words, you expand our knowledge. When you reach that point, that when you invent something useful, that is used, but basically some things are unfortunately blocked, you know.
And like you mentioned about tinnitus, and people should be aware of the smart meters, because the smart meters during the water meters, they're pulsing. And there's a friend of mine, because they tell you it can't be cured, but there's a friend of mine, and he was in Poland and he couldn't sleep. He tried everything, he tried all, and then he moved to Argentina, and I said, how is it? Gone.
Right. You know, there's a lot of devices like that. I mean, to monitor water usage, to monitor electricity and so on. I mean, we are surrounded, and you know, that's crazy.
Like they have the technology that it can pulse once a month just to get the reading. That makes sense, because it removes a person. It is pulsing a couple of times a second, and you're bombarded by these frequencies.
Crazy. Yes, that's crazy. No, I know. I mean, we basically have to use the knowledge and listen to the advice of experts, you know, and but as I mentioned before, we are governed by idiots and psychopaths, you know, and lower bottom of the society is basically totally ignorant.
Well, that's my aim, is to wake up the population. Hence, called the awakening. We have to wake up.
It's a matter of survival.
Exactly.
You know, it's a matter of survival. I mean, if we don't wake up, we won't survive. We won't survive.
Like you're fighting the system. Like, how did they kind of quash you down? Because, you know, I know that's because like they don't want you with the cures. Like, what way did they affect you?
Well, I mean, they tried to discredit me. I mean, for a while, they were, for example, like I had lectures in various cities and so on. They could call organizers and they said, oh, this guy has no Ph.D., he's crazy, he's a psychopath, he has some psychological problems, he's Satanist, he's pedophile, you know. And some organizers who wouldn't know me, I mean, they would cancel lecture because they would think, or that police is basically looking for me and so on. So all crazy stuff. They were trying to discredit me or downplay the inventions which I made, you know. Basically, oh, it's not important and so on and so on. So all various kinds of things. Fortunately, I mean, because of my knowledge, they cannot directly attack me because my level of knowledge exceeds their level of knowledge. So in any public meeting, they never tried that because basically I would put them down with their knowledge. I mean, they cannot compete with this level of knowledge. You know, so they try all kinds of things. They are trying to block you. For example, I had a group on Facebook called Holistic Medicine. It was in Polish, I have in English, and as well I have another group in Polish. And very early I explained in the group, probably that was March or February, March this year, when this thing happened with the virus. Because of my connection, international connection in medicine and science and so on, I basically acquired information, and I was with him probably 3-4 weeks able to figure out how this virus was made, where was made, you know, what purpose was, and so on, how to treat it and so on. And I shared this information. And Facebook basically blocked my group, which was 44,000 people. Block it for no reason, because I was sharing the truth.
Yes.
I was sharing the truth. So that's how they manipulate people, you know, and this is actually criminal on their part, because the method of treatment of coronavirus is useful in other diseases and infections as well. And it was consulted and developed with a team of experts, you know, not only me, but some other experts, including professors of medicine, you know, contributed to that. And we shared that information, and that was blocked. So in other words, those people contributed to deaths of many people.
Yes.
You know, basically they are criminally responsible, because that was an effective method where you could treat coronavirus infection at home. You know, and as well, preventive measures. We were showing what should you do in terms of preventive measures to prevent it, not masks, not other things, but improving the immune system, which we talk about, right? Which you, thanks to our meeting some 8 or 10 years ago, you improved that for yourself and your family, right?
Exactly. And,
you know,
and like even if you look
and
at
it works, and it works.
No,
you can,
yeah.
so that's
and
good.
like if you look at say Japan,
Yeah,
like they weren't making people wear the masks. There's like 128 million, and I think 1,000 people died. So that's all you have to do.
Density is great there. Yeah? So distancing is difficult.
Yeah. So like you just look at that and you go, okay, who's telling the lies? Who's telling the truth? And we're being washed. But like I love what you're doing. I love your fight.
Thank you.
And like, well, perhaps what I can do is get some of the information that I can share with the audience as well on the diet. I don't know about the paper that you have. Is that still available?
You can. I mean, I sent you links, and you can add it to your podcast, or maybe put in some programs, or maybe in the links. You can add in the links, you know. Yes, please do that. I mean, this information is, I want to share with people. They should have access to this. You know, I made a poster recently that there is a positive thing of coronavirus, because right now we know who is intelligent and who is an idiot, and who is a moral person, and who is the liar and cheater, and you know, and so basically, you know, we know right now. You can just talk to people and you can figure out right away.
And I think what's after happening as well is it's after waking up the population, because of what's happening, people had to stay inside, and they started researching and listening all and now they know all the lies. So I have seen in the last 6 months there's a way more people that have waken up. So.
Yes, that's great. I think work like people like you, David Icke, and so on is amazing. I mean, we all contribute to this enlightenment of people, and that's is very important for our survival. You know, and I can tell you honestly, I mean, I am the age which I told you about. I mean, you can prove it. I can show you documents. The other thing is you don't get sick. You know, my patients are feeling excellent. I mean, once upon a time, they were taking a lot of medications. They have disabling diseases and disorders and so on, and they are operating. They are happy people, and that makes me happy. That's you know, it's such a satisfaction. For example, some years ago, my cousin came here, distant cousin, and she had pains in her entire body, you know, sort of pains which were going from places to places, joints, muscles. And she was in so much pain, she couldn't sleep, she couldn't work, study, and she wanted to commit suicide. She had medical insurance, but you have to wait sometimes like half a year to see a specialist, or a couple of months. So she couldn't do that because, I mean, she was in so much pain. So she actually went privately to doctors and paid a lot of money. She spent like 40,000 zlotys within 8 years, and she have seen 20 specialists, and none of them solved her problem. She came to me, and I solved her problem within one and a half hour. And after 3 weeks, she was driving a car, she was sleeping, she was pain-free, you know, and she started to study, work, and everything. I was amazed. I said, hold a second, something is wrong in the system. I understand one doctor could be wrong, 2 doctors, 3 doctors, 4 doctors, but 20 is something wrong with the system, you know? So this girl, if she wouldn't come to me, probably she would be dead because she was suicidal already. She was in so much pain, she didn't want to live, you know? And there are many cases like that.
No, definitely.
Many cases like that. I will tell you another interesting case. Woman had 65 years old. She had 3 strokes. Without blood, there are basically types of strokes where you could have just small vessel. Basically the vessel is too small because of deposits, and not necessarily is a burst of the vessel. You know, so she had no burst of the vessels or blood clots in the brain, but nevertheless, some parts of her brain were damaged. And she was partially, left her side was paralyzed. She had problem with speech, and she couldn't keep the balance. So she has to use wall or somebody or some railing, or somebody has to hold her. So she was basically like a disabled person. And she went into rehabilitation. Some, you know, she was supervised by doctors and some professionals who were doing some exercises and so on. And she was almost free of paralyzed, and as well her speech improved greatly. However, her balance was not under control at all. So, and that was a problem. She came, and we saw her, you know, with another person, therapist, and we set a diet for her, some natural supplements to restore the brain and blood flow and so on. And she came 3 months later, and she did pirouette in our office. And she said she could dance. She has no paralysis at all. Her speech was perfect, you know, no problem at all. No problem at all. And she couldn't do that within 2 years. You know, so it shows how natural medicine, how holistic medicine can help. Of course, one should mention that not everybody is good. I mean, there is a lot of people who are trying to basically use desperate people to make money, you know, and they promise, you know, a lot, and they don't deliver much at all. So that's the problem. That's
like, I think we should have like a rating system, kind of like the eBay system. So like,
and in anything, like,
and another thing is what I believe we should do is have a document that the doctor signs that they're not taking a kickback or a bribe, and they lose their license if they do.
That's right.
So then the likes of you, more people will start coming to you. Less will go to the you know, the corrupt doctors.
That's right.
And that's how we can make a change to the.
In China, there was a very interesting long time ago effect. Empire set up a system. Doctor had a region where he was, you know, supervising maybe some couple of thousands or so patients, and he was getting compensation from the ruler of the China when people were healthy. So the compensation was lower depending on the number of people who were sick. You know, so I think that's great.
That's exactly. You know, that's when a doctor, like a doctor, should get X amount per month,
and then because people are healthy,
and when they're sick, they don't get it.
That's right.
You know, can be sure how the industry should work. Switch.
Yeah. And I remember I spoke with some officials from embassy, China embassy in Warsaw, And he told me that there are three categories of doctors. Good doctor is a doctor in his region, nobody gets sick. So he's a good doctor. Then there is an average doctor, second kind of doctor. In his region, some people get sick, but he knows how to treat them. And the third kind of doctor is the doctor who, in his region, people get sick and he doesn't know how to treat them. And unfortunately, right now, we have this third kind of doctors very often. Majority of those doctors are third kind of doctors. In other words, some of them even have knowledge, but I mean, system sort of sorts them or directs them into operation, so they actually keep the patient sick as long as possible.
Exactly.
The same like with lawyers. I mean, you know, basically you go to the lawyer, some things could be solved within a couple of days. It takes years.
Yes.
You know, Voltaire said, I was ruining twice in my life twice. Once when I lost the case, and second time when I won the case. You know, and basically I have some friends who have some court cases about division of the real estate or some belongings, right? After somebody's death or something like that. And it takes years.
No, yeah.
Something which should take very short time, you know, exactly. And then basically because of money. So those professions are basically trying to get as much money and drain you, you know.
I'm exposing all of that. I have cases for all the bailiff system, the whole lot. I'm showing all the sneaky tricks that they're doing. The insurance, because that's something I just want to briefly ask you as well, because you mentioned, and I know that happens with the health insurance, that somebody says, well, I've got, say, like a cancer. Yeah, you have to go on the waiting list for 6 months. And is it true that, like, say with the COVID, that if you're diagnosed with COVID, that you're not covered for your insurance? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I had heard that as well, and I'm just curious that that was one of the reasons. So you weren't covered by insurance because it was classed as an epidemic, and an epidemic was an exclusion. So that wouldn't surprise me.
I don't know, but I have heard some horror stories about that. You know, that they lock people, they don't give them enough. And they didn't give them any medications because they were on quarantine. They didn't give them enough water and things like that. So a lot of, you know, I think system is not treating people right. You know, there were even jokes like a guy comes to the doctor and doctors said, well, you know, your appointment for some procedure, medical procedure is 2022, so in 2 years. And the guy said, oh, that's not a long time, you know, so could I wait? You know? Exactly. And the other joke was something like a guy as well is waiting. He said, you know, his procedure is maybe 3 years time, in 3 years operation or something. And he said, but look, doctor, I don't know whether I would live this long. It's no problem. I'm writing this with the pencil. We can always erase it.
Unfortunately,
this is at least good that people have sense of humor, you know.
Exactly.
But this is not how the system should work, because in some acute cases you should get help right away.
No,
you know, like this girl, this distant cousin, which I mentioned to you. I mean, you should get help immediately, you know, because I mean, she was in so much pain. And so on, you know, it's unforgivable. You know, nobody should forgive things like that.
Definitely. Listen, I know I need to have a part 2 of this because we could talk for hours, but I know that I'm conscious you've got your guest here as well.
No problem.
So how can people get in contact with you?
They can find me on Facebook. I think that's the easiest. My name is Marek, M-A-R-E-K. Roland, R-O-L-A-N-D, and if you search on me for me on Google, you can find a lot of materials there, or you can find me on Facebook under Marek, M-A-R-E-K, and last name Roland, R-O-L-A-N-D, and that's very easy. you know, and it's very unique. So you don't probably won't find.
I put in the podcast description and on the YouTube and I'll
you
actually put the link so that they can just
you can put link.
Yes,
and that would be great. So put the link probably to Facebook. I think that's the easiest. Because I mean, when you Google, I call this Google factor. If you have a unique name, then, for example, I have unique combination in other Marek, Roland, and you put this in parentheses in Google, then it shows how known person is, because the number of links usually is related to how known they are. Of course, if somebody has common name and there is thousands of people with the same name, that's not the same thing. But some people have very unique combination of names. Then in my case, it's very unique. So my Google factor once was quite high for a scientist. It used to be around 100,000. But I think Google is as well putting certain people down,
they're removing all the truth tellers.
So right now my Google factor, which I call, is between 5,000 to 20,000. They basically lower my ranking, you know, on purpose, you know. So this is one of those ways to basically shut somebody off, you know. But I'm working on a book on diet, and I hope that would, you know, allow people to get more information, and as well, maybe in hard copy, people would spread the message more. But if you provide a link, I mean, there's information about diet, so people can learn about this and some other discoveries. And, you know, as I said, I mean, a lot of people got healthy without even contacting me, by basically reading advice, you know. I mean, we spent together in Warsaw, how long? I don't know, half an hour. And I mean, that changed your life, yes, which was very good, you know. I think that's great, you know, that you can inspire somebody even during short conversation.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm glad, you know, that you came as well. And, really, you know, in the future, maybe we can meet again. And,
definitely. So I'll let people have all the links, and I want to thank you for all you're doing, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for what you are doing, because, you know, you are spreading the good news in a sense, you know, not only bad news. Because we have so much bad news, and this is positive. In a sense, knowledge is very positive. We cannot sort of shut our eyes and ears, exactly, and block the knowledge, because that's, you know, we are blinded and deaf. No, we have to know. Exactly. Sometimes it's better to know the truth, you know, because you can protect yourself.
Exactly.
Knowledge is power.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's all for us today. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Be sure to share with your friends, especially this episode. It's been really knowledgeable, and give us a 5-star rating. Until next week, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.